Hello. Now, Austria is in the news today. It's banned UK skiers who arrived for their skiing holiday over the bank holiday and were met with they were turned away at the airport. Some of them were put up in hotels. I think 12 of those have been allowed to take tests and will then be ultimately admitted onto the Tyrol ski slopes. But this comes after France placed a blanket ban on British skiers accessing the French ski resorts. Now, on the one hand, this it severely disrupts people's holiday plans. I'm very sorry about that. On the other hand, I think it's another example where the news reports managed to confuse something which has really been the hallmark of the whole story of the pandemic, right from the beginning, and that it confuses health with legislation. And people quite rightly see aggressive legislation, knee-jerk legislation, and they say they want to resist that this is restricting their liberty and in an unreasonable way. They are quite right. But at the same time, it seems to me that a health crisis like the pandemic requires a very special treatment and very quick treatment, and maybe in an age when we have global communication, when we have immediate communication, we aren't using that properly. So, for example, in this Austrian story, the health ministry in Vienna didn't update its website. It's no good sort of turning around after the event saying, sorry, we didn't update our website, but you're still not allowed in. Because this makes a nonsense of the idea that we have communication opportunities in the 21st century that we didn't have in the 19th century. Somehow, in the 21st century, we've landed in a position where we are maladroit, where we are incapable of communicating effectively, though we have greater means for communication than we've ever had before. This seems to me to be a result of trying to duplicate our communication. So we have to communicate on the computer, on the internet, and at the same time on paper. And we have to sign things off and all this sort of rubbish. We need to be more proactive if we are going to respond at speed to a crisis. And the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, is probably just the first of many crises that we are going to be facing in this century. The public, quite rightly, has a reason to feel irritated and aggrieved when the information isn't there in the official sites where it should be. The Austrian Health Ministry have behaved like plonkers. And yet, on the other hand, it was on the slopes, on the Tyrol slopes in the earlier part of this year, in February and March 2020, the earlier part of last year actually, in February, March 2020, that the COVID virus spread rapidly. So, the Austrian government has good reason to be sensitive about the skiing season and about the sudden input of British tourists with their skis. But it really should get its act together. Anyway, any thoughts on this? I would welcome your input, because this is a much richer debate, I think, than the one that often we're having at the moment. We're often having this binary debate about whether one gets vaccinated or whether one doesn't get vaccinated. And I think there's a much bigger debate about the way the law has been harnessed very poorly to deal with the pandemic, and no government has got the message right. So people who are, there seem to me to be two forms of anti-vaxxers. There are those who think that medically the vaccination is not efficacious, and there are those who are resisting the legal pressure. Whatever legal pressure there would be, they would resist it. And I think there is confusion of these two groups. And that confusion comes from the fact that there's been a knee-jerk and very ham-fisted response from all governments to the pandemic. We need to get this right. We need to get our communication right. And in an age when communication should be universal, should be immediate, it clearly is not. Love to know your ideas. Do follow the channel. Do ring the bell.